Books steal in polite ways. That's the first thing I learned at Everett House. Polite paper, polite fonts, polite emails with per my last note tucked in like a blade. The second thing I learned is that if you do your job right, I'm Claire Whitaker, 36, an editorial assistant with a title that sounds like I fetch coffee. I do, and a workload that reads like I run the imprint. I don't. My boss, Eliza Rourke, is the kind of star who gets profiled for owning one sweater in 5 colors. She's also, this part matters, a novelist, heavy on the quotation marks. I wrote her bestseller, not alone, not from nothing. She had a pitch about an old map found in a widow's trunk and grief that smells like the ocean, beautiful ingredients. But if writing is cooking, I turned her pantry into dinners. I wrote scenes, then voices, then whole chapters while she gave notes like more ache and less New England. We'd pass the document back and forth until the track changes looked like confetti. Then the confetti got swept into a hardback called The Widow's Atlas, with her name in a font you could see from across a bookstore. Ghostwriting is industry standard, she told me, looking past my head at the window. We don't say it out loud because readers like to marry the myth. I'm not asking you to say it out loud, I said, which in hindsight was my first lie. I'm asking for a raise. She laughed with her eyes. You're on a great track, Claire. Be patient. Patience, in publishing, is what you call it when women do twice the work for half the credit. I took the subway home to Dorchester, feeling like a sentence missing its period. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't I quit? Because I loved the work, because Boston made sense in winter when I was carrying a story in a tote bag, and because I wanted to believe dues paid turn into doors opening, and because I thought I was smarter than the problem. That's my flaw. I think metadata will save me. So I did what nerds do when our hearts get bruised, systems. I started leaving fingerprints, not obvious ones. If I was going to be a ghost, I would be a ghost with a dental record. First, a style signature. Everyone has one. I decided mine would be a tiny gravitational pull toward British spellings and certain character arcs. Gray for coastal mornings, defense only when the widower was talking to his son. Micro patterns no American copy editor would introduce by accident, but consistent enough to test. Second, a punctuation rhythm. I grew up with a dad who loved the M- like an unruly child. I use it sparingly and never with spaces. Eliza sprinkles them like glitter and sometimes adds a space because she thinks it looks airy. In the draft I owned, the dashes showed discipline. In hers, they didn't. I kept snapshots. Third, typo fingerprints. You know how you always misspell the same 2 words? Mine are necessary and accommodate. I fixed them every time. I introduced, on purpose, one unique goof that I could live with. Lodestar misspelled as lodestar, and used it 3 times in early chapters, then fixed it in a single sweep in the final pass. If it showed up in any converted file later, it meant someone lifted from an intermediate I touched. Finally, the chapter acrostic. First word of each chapter, in order, spelled Claire wrote this. Before you judge me, remember, you asked how the sausage gets made. Also, Eliza changed beginnings constantly. The odds it would survive were small. That was the point. I wanted a pattern that could be dismantled by honest revision and preserved by lazy theft. The Widow's Atlas shipped. The city thawed, and Eliza did the morning shows with a stack of sticky notes, pretending to be processed. I write longhand, she told a host, holding a fountain pen she had bought that week. Back at the office, I answered email. A reader in Iowa thanked her for the scene where the widow eats oysters alone and finally tastes them. I reread the line and remembered writing it in the Ethiopian place in JP, with my fingers smelling like berbera. I felt small and large at the same time. It's a dangerous feeling. It makes you ambitious without giving you direction. Then the second book happened. Not happened, was scheduled. In publishing, books don't occur. They are calendared like weather. The contract arrived with milestones and a bonus Eliza could buy a car with. My name wasn't on a single page. You'll get a bump, our managing editor said, like passing a tissue. Rourke inspires loyalty. Also invoices, I said. Eliza flew to Randall's cabin in Maine to work. I biked to the office on a Boston July that felt like chewing air. I built the book we'd pitched out of notes she sent at 2 a.m. that read like fortune cookies. More salt, less mother, the lake matters. I wrote a widower again, a different widow, a map that wanted to be metaphor, and then decided to be plot. And I left my fingerprints, careful ones. kind ones that would never wreck a story, only identify a body. Ben, our copy editor, noticed the British spellings, but loved me. Are we in London? He scrawled in the margin. Is the widow wearing a barber? He fixed them if they looked like accidents, and left them if they felt like choices. I loved him back for that, in the way you love a person who makes you legible to yourself. He's 42, gay, sharp, always cold. His space heater is illegal and heroic. We ate lunch on Milk Street, dreading our inboxes. You could go public, he said one day, mouthful of chicken salad. Anonymous essay. The ghostwriting economy. And turn myself into a symbol, I said. Symbols don't get book deals or friends. You already don't have weekends, he said. Maybe you could try honesty. Honesty doesn't pay Boston rent, I said, and then apologized because he lives with 2 cats and a lease from... We aimed for the Boston Book Festival as our big drum. By October, the river between names was something you could hold. It whistled like Eliza when it breathed more ache and walked like me. The acrostic miraculously still spelled. Claire wrote this because she had moved the beginnings around, then decided the originals had chemistry. The M dashes behaved like teenagers when I looked away, and the lodestar typo was gone, just like it should be, because I took it out, which is why I noticed when it reappeared in the promo galleys on a page I hadn't touched since July. How did that happen? I asked Ben, breath fogging the edge of his monitor. He frowned and zoomed in. We exported from an early draft for the sales team and Eliza's agent. The promo galley is patched from that. It wasn't supposed to ship. To whom? I asked. He clicked, agent, 2 media friends, sponsor, and Rourke gave it to the festival curator. So there it was, a slice of July, copy of a copy, strolling around in October with my fingerprints on it, wearing a typo I'd already corrected. I went very quiet again, thunder quiet. Don't, Ben said, not sure what he was telling me not to do. I'm not gonna flip the table, I said. Tables are heavy. I took the red line home and wrote an essay in my head the whole ride. Not yet. Timing matters. Revenge without an event is just a diary. The event came with a stage and a pastel scarf. The main tent at Copley was a church pretending to be canvas. Eliza looked expensive in a sweater like fog. The moderator wore the exact expression of a woman who has moderated 1,000 panels and lost faith 1.5 times. I stood in the aisle with a lanyard that said staff because they can't function without us but don't want us seated. They did craft talk, which is theater. Then a reading. Eliza opened to chapter 4, which begins with the line, "Now that the map had started to lie, the town could finally tell the truth." It's one of mine. It came out of a morning on Castle Island, where I watched a gull steal a hot dog bun and thought, that's what confession looks like when you don't speak English. She read beautifully. She always has. That's part of what makes this so tricky. She isn't talentless. She's just comfortable using my lungs. The crowd sighed in the right places. A woman dabbed her eyes with a program. I felt proud the way you feel proud when your child wins a thing you don't get to hold. Then the Q&A. A college kid asked about research. I got lost on purpose. Eliza lied. A man in a vest asked about grief. The moderator was about to wind it down when a woman behind me lifted her hand. River of God, it was my mother. Of course she was. Who decided to spell gray with an E in the boat scenes? She asked warmly, when it's A in the town chapters. The moderator blinked. I'm sorry. The British spelling, my mother repeated. In the casual way you say you saw a friend at Star Market. It follows the water. It's elegant. I wondered if that was a conscious choice. Ben made a sound like a kettle. Eliza smiled like a woman taking a curve too fast. I like that you noticed, she said. The language. She looked towards me. It wasn't an accident. Not the seeking. The seeking is habit. Articulate. The myth. Borrow a face. I lifted my chin 1 notch. Don't fish in me. We went back and forth, she said. Ultimately, I prefer the A. Then why is it E in chapter 6? My mother asked sweetly. The way a person folds laundries. It might be a copy editing oversight, Eliza said. A ripple went through the tent. Oversight is a nice word. It implies you must have looked. Also, my mother added, and I swear to you she looked at me like she'd promised France. I adore the line about the map lying. I'm curious where it came from. From Eliza started and stopped. You could see her flipping through the flipbook of our emails, except she doesn't read email when she could be reading herself. It's a theme, she said carefully. It's a seagull with a bun, I said, out loud. My voice sounded like someone else's until everyone turned and then it sounded like mine. The moderator did her job. Perhaps we can talk about process more at the signing, she said, which I am Heo is moderator for Let's Move Along. We moved along. We moved so fast my feet buzzed. After, in the signing line, people told Eliza she was brave. Someone told me I was rude. I took it like a vitamin I didn't order. That night, I sent my essay. Not anonymous. I don't have the face for anonymity. I have the face of a woman who answered too many Slack messages and stopped smiling about it. I sent it to a reporter who covers the book world the way sports guys cover trades. I attached screenshots, the British E's, the organized M dashes, the lodestar that appeared only in the promo galley, and then magically in stores when a last-minute file got pushed while I was asleep. I attached the chapter acrostic, which would make me look insane unless people saw it was right there. The story published 2 days later. The headline was merciful. The invisible hands behind a bestseller. I came to work to find a stack of printed statements on my chair like scriptures. Everett House is committed to creative collaboration. Eliza Rourke believes in nurturing young talent. We regret any confusion. Confusion is such a pretty word. HR asked me to clarify my employment status. Legal asked me to clarify my intentions. Eliza texted a single line, "You ungrateful child." I was 36 years old, with a mother who wore her church dress to the book festival, and a father who texts in all caps because he thinks it's polite. I took a deep breath and replied, "I am not your child." Then, the part I didn't plan, splash radius. Ben was placed on leave. Not fired, no one is fired in publishing. They are asked to seek other opportunities in gentle fonts. His illegal space heater sat under his desk like a dog waiting for a door. I went to HR and said the part that hurt to say. "Put me on leave instead," I said. He flagged the problem. I pulled the pin. "That's not how this works," the HR woman said through a mouth that had held many scripts. "Also, you have violated confidentiality." "I violated a myth," I said. Confidentiality was already broken when early drafts were sent around like canapes. We settled. We always settle. People think lawsuits end with gavels. They end with PDFs. I got back pay disguised as a bonus and a letter acknowledging substantial editorial contribution to the Widow's Atlas and the River Between Names. My non-compete dissolved like cotton candy in coffee. Ben came back without his heater. I bought him a new one and told him it was a lamp. Eliza went on a podcast and cried. "I'm a woman in a brutal industry," she said, wetly. I made a space for Claire. She chose the spotlight. I turned off the podcast before the host could murmur, "Thank you for your vulnerability." Vulnerability is not the same thing as accountability. One is a performance, the other is a ledger. Here's the part where I wish I could tell you I got everything and no one got hurt. I didn't, and they did. One of the interns wrote me a DM that read like a goodbye. A junior publicist cried in a bathroom and then posted a paragraph about grace. My mother called to say she was proud and also could I come over. Because Dad had bought 6 copies of the paper and was giving them to the neighbors. I took my settlement and got a burrito and walked along the Charles while the river pretended to be still. Then I went home and wrote a business plan. Hear me out. I know, but I write plans when I'm scared. It's nicer than screaming. I called it Margin House because that's where the truth lives. Little notes on the side of the official story. I didn't want to start a press to spite anyone. I wanted a place where the bylines meant what they said. Boston is full of writers who make beautiful things between shifts. I had a list on my phone of people whose sentences made me sit up straighter on the T. I emailed 5, 3 wrote back. One of them was a nurse who writes after midnight. One was a Haitian poet who works at a bakery in Hyde Park. One was Ben, who had a thriller he was ashamed of because it was fun. "You can't pay us yet," Ben said. Practical. "I can pay on delivery," I said. "No net 30, no exposure. It will hurt, and we will do it anyway." We rented a closet in a building with radiators that hiss and an elevator that hates itself. We bought a printer that thinks it's a person and a pot of coffee that tasted like metal until we learned to clean it with vinegar. I wrote a submissions page that said, "We will never put our name where yours should be." I wrote contracts in plain English that answered the question, "What happens if you get famous with you get paid more?" The first book we published was The Nurse's Code Blue at 2 a.m., and I cried shipping the pre-orders because our boxes looked like intention. The second was Ben's Thriller, which was indeed fun and also had a sex scene so tender it made me blush at my own desk. We sold enough to pay rent and buy a better kettle. Sometimes Eliza's name trends, and I still feel it in my gums. I don't click. Every once in a while, a junior from Everett House comes by and whispers like we're trading state secrets. "How did you do it?" they ask. "How did you survive?" I tell them the truth. I learned the hard way. You can love the work and still name the theft. You can be grateful and angry in the same sentence. You can put your fingerprints on a thing and then choose to keep your hands. And when you go public, bring receipts and a plan to feed the people the splash hits. Last month, we hosted a reading in a borrowed room. Folding chairs, Costco cookies, fluorescent lights, trying their best. The Haitian poet read a piece about her mother braiding her hair during a hurricane. The line that made me press my palm to my chest. The map lies, but my mother's hands don't. I didn't write it. I never would have. That's the point. After, my mother stacked chairs while Dad handed out programs like he was running for office. "Proud of you," he said in caps with his mouth. My mother leaned in, smelling like starch and something sweet. "You looked tall," she said. "I'm wearing flats," I said. "I didn't say taller," she said. I said tall. On the way home, I passed the bookstore in Brookline, where Eliza's face once blocked the sun. In the window were 3 debuts with names you don't know yet, and a little sign that said, "Local Press Spotlight, Margin House." I took a picture. I did not post it. I sent it to Ben with a heart emoji he will make fun of me for, and to my mother who will print it like it's a grandchild. Do I regret the acrostic? Sometimes. It's dramatic. It's petty. It also saved me. Chapter 1s are still dangerous for me. I keep wanting to write the first line of every new project, so the first letters spell Claire wrote this again. It's a tick now. I scrub it out before copy edits. I don't need it anymore. Because here's the real ending, the one you wanted to know and I didn't know how to say when I was younger. I wrote a book with my name on it. No acrostics, no fingerprints, just sentences that stayed when nobody asked them to. It's about a woman who stops ghosting herself. It's messy and a little too Boston. There's a Dunkin' cup that becomes a leitmotif. Ben made me take out 2 of them, but it is mine. Eliza will write another or not. I don't have to care. She'll be fine. She is built to be fine. I am built to make things and put my name on them and pay people on time and drink terrible coffee that somehow tastes like ethics. Books still steal in polite ways. That's true. But now, when they try to steal from me, they have to look me in the eye. And if anyone asks where the map line came from, I'll say the real thing. It's a seagull with a bun. It's my city. It's my work. It's my name.